Hi, this is Karen Finley, and I'll be performing passages from my book, Grabbing Pussy, at the Laurie Beachman Theater, West 42nd Street in New York City. And I'm talking with Rabbi Sol Solomon on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, and I am smearing myself with potato salad right now because I am so excited to be talking to our guest in the neighborhood today, Karen Finley. She has been a performance artist since the late 1970s in such controversial and groundbreaking theatrical works as The Return of the Chocolate-Smeared Woman, We Keep Our Victims Ready, and the more recent George and Martha. She even has a new book out of her monologue/rants. It's called Grabbing, I'm going to say the P word, Grabbing Pussy, and it's all about sexual politics in this Me Too era. She was a Ms. Magazine Woman of the Year, and you can see her live for 3 consecutive Sundays between July 15th through July 29th at the Laurie Beachman Theater in Midtown Manhattan. Won't you please give me a potato salad smeared welcome to Karen Finley. Shalom, Karen.
Shalom, how are you?
I got the usual complaints, the bad back, the hips, but I'm managing. How are you?
I guess I could say the same thing, yeah. I'm managing.
Oy.
Trying to make art.
This is
the world.
The important thing, making the art, and people are going to be seeing this new book. Now, did you conceive of the book, Grabbing Pussy, as a book or as an audio performance, poem, slam thing, art first?
I considered it as a book, but that's a good question. It's a book, and it's meant to be read as books are meant to. That's their purpose. So yes, it's a book to be read.
You have a very particular, outrageous performance style. It's very in your face, a lot of yelling and stuff. Have you ever seen anybody else do a play or performance piece of yours that you wrote?
Well, yes, I have done plays, but I'm just going to back, and people have done my work, but I usually see my performances in the same way that artists paint their own paintings. It's derived from myself. It would be almost as a comedian doing someone else's jokes. So I find that that part of the artwork is about me and about the relationship that I have to the material. But I just wanted to go back for a moment about, I don't know if you use the word screaming or...
Well, come on, you do. You do.
I mean, I think that that's actually what this book is supposed to be addressing, is that it's talking or about with my work and my performance that I've been doing, is addressing this time with the Me Too movement, or about the way how women and feminism is perceived, that when the female voice is speaking, that it's dismissed as being, yelling or as a screaming, and about those perceptions about women agency and anger and the performativity of that.
Okay, well, fair enough. However, it should be said that, yes, right-wing Republicans might say that Elizabeth Warren is a crazy screaming woman, and they're wrong, but, you are not Elizabeth Warren. You have a very different style, too.
Yes, I think that yes, there is a style within my work, but I just wanted to bring that up about how male performers that are expressing themselves, and there's going to be other words that are going to be describing them. I just wanted to have a fluency about that, and in the conversation how that relates to.
Now, I've read a bit of the book, and I could be wrong about this, but I get the feeling you really don't like Donald Trump. Am I wrong on this?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
If you were to boil down in a sentence or two your greatest complaint with this man as President of the United States, what it would be?
Racist and xenophobia.
I mean, the racism, we can all sort of feel it, and the travel ban and all that. But is that really racism, or is it really just America for Americans?
Well, I think that those sentiments in thinking about history has been used before, and that's why it's so dangerous to be using nationalism as a cover for xenophobia and racism. So I disagree.
It's sort of interesting. A year ago, women were out there protesting wearing pussy hats, and they put that word right in the center of the American conversation, where people couldn't even say the word 10 years earlier. And now you've, of course, got the piece called grabbing pussy. I mean, how do you feel about that particular word?
Thank you for that question. That's a very astute question of thinking about many different ways of how society responds to language and what are forms of activism with words that have been used against people. So yes, I think that my response to it is that it's complicated and layered. I'm using the language that's used against me, and I have complicated feelings about it. And I think that that's what this book is looking at. But also it's done in, I know I'm not coming across as being humorous here, but also in humorous ways, because the word pussy is also done in humorous ways too. There's ways where people will be using humor and using emotional responses with words that have a history behind them. And humor has been a weapon to use against freeing or speaking out about injustice. And so I'm trying to be doing that in this book. And with the performance, but I think that's a good question, and I don't have necessarily the answer about it, but how do we use words that are used against us and then free them?
I mean, black people have been trying to do that for many years with the N-word, and the rappers kind of have, but it's still, no matter what they do with it, you know, a white person can't, and shouldn't use that word, and it's not pleasant hearing it coming out of the mouths of black people. So, I don't know, I mean, is there going to be a point when women are calling each other the C word?
Yes, I mean, I think about with language, I think that there's words that become terror. You know, language can become terror. Also about how people will be saying anything.
I mean, people call me the S word, schlemiel, but
in violent ways. So these are all things that I consider within my writing and in my performing.
When you first started performing back in the late 1970s, did you see a niche there of like women aren't out there really being not just standing primly with glasses reading poetry, but physically being assaultive in a way with language, with your physical body? Or was there, since it was the late 1970s, you also had people like Patti Smith and folks who were already pushing the envelope in terms of what constituted rock and roll art and performance?
Thank you for that question, because I think that what you're asking is about the discourse of art, or the discourse of comedy, and the discourse between people and what they communicate. And so, yes, my work is in discourse with artists before me, and not just female artists, but male artists and trans artists. So, yes, I feel that my work is in discourse.
Did it take you a while to, like the first time you got up in front of an audience with a piece, were you shaking, and were you talking more like a normal person, and then you became more and more yourself and more of a performer actress? Or did you leap in and say, oh my God, I'm on fire, and it was almost like immediate?
I'm interested to know why that is of importance to you, about the physicality or sensation, or the body within the embodiment. I think that what I'm hearing is the embodiment of the creative process. And I think that brings back to an earlier question when you were asked about can other people do my work. And I think other people could do my work. But the embodiment of the piece is part of the creative process for me. And yes, it can be different within, and I think anyone who takes the stage, that there is an embodiment of being on, about being looked at, about the work, about the connection within that audience that's in the dark. So it's a deep purpose. It's also terrifying as well. For example, just even before our interview, I was told that you would just jump right into the interview. And I thought that was beautiful for me to hear, because that meant that there's a form of performativity within our engagement here, too. You know, there's that you are leading. And yes, there are those qualities that we have in the consciousness, and that's about my performance. And I like to have an awareness about the performativity.
But it's also, let's say, if you look at just out of the blue, take David Bowie, right? So when he first started being a singer, songwriter, actor, he was in an English song, Anthony Newley mode, and then he did the folk thing, because everybody does the folk thing, and then he discovered, I can be alien man who sold the world, thin white Duke person, and put on these different personae. Did you go through that, or were you sort of fully formed as soon as you started performing?
I think that my personality doesn't have the capacity as great artist as David Bowie, because that's why I haven't gone into acting, or if I start into music, go into music, because the fame or that celebrity culture is not what I'm aiming for. I'm an introvert. And
wow! I think you probably shocked everybody listening at that. You are an introvert?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that people have it wrong in thinking that because a person can be performing on stage, or that they do outlandish things, that then they're an extrovert. But introversion means that you center yourself, that you do need quiet time, that you like to be alone, that there is a sense of solitude, and you get your centering from aloneness. That does not mean loneliness, but aloneness, as opposed to an extrovert, which maybe that they get their centering from other people and being outside. So it takes a lot out of me when I am in the I can do it, but it's not something that I'm gifted with naturally.
Let's roll it back, though, to when, of course, you were part of what they call the NEA Ford. The NEA was chugging along, getting federal funding, and then you guys pushed the envelope a little more than people like Jesse Helms was happy with, and suddenly it became a big hoo-ha. What are your thoughts this day and age now of the federal money, U.S. taxpayer money, funding controversial art?
I feel that art is to be supported, but I will answer that you cannot get away from, you can't escape federal support or public support. I mean, public support is all around us, whether it's going to be radio, whether it's going to be education, a library, the streets, the water, mailing. That becomes a very vague distinction and of a legal weapon that can be used, of using decency or controversial art. And in my case, it was using the term decency, that my work was indecent, and so that it shouldn't be supported.
You were naked at times, or putting chocolate on yourself, or taking a sweet potato and doing things that most people would not do with a sweet potato. What do you say to people who will still say, okay, you want to do that? Fantastic. Find an audience, have them pay for it. Maybe nowadays you can even go raise Kickstarter or Indiegogo funding, but don't ask tax money to go to that.
Yes, in a very simplistic way, I hear the reduction of my work in these, sound bites. But I am an artist I'm a professor, and my work has artistic merit. But it's speaking to a wider issue than my own personal career. I was a scapegoat and the other three artists, and what it was about gay rights. The other three artists were queer.
Well, Tim Miller, Holly Hughes,
also,
and...
Yes,
yeah.
John Black. And so it becomes the idea of who's speaking. It's also about feminism. It's about control of our body and our destiny, women's body. It's about also what I was speaking about, U.S. policy, and about war. So the idea of decency is that within the First Amendment, that offensive material or material that you don't agree with is to be allowed to be spoken. That's what my position is. As well, many, many jobs and areas of the world are controversial, whether it's going to be tobacco farmers, whether it's going to be schools, different books in libraries. It becomes very difficult that one starts going through subject matter to be deciding what is offensive and what's not.
If we talk about reductivity in our current society, I mean, think of it this way. Look what happened when the Supreme Court made a decision to, just based on religious freedom, that a baker is allowed to not bake a cake for a gay couple that wants to be married. So they made that decision. In their case, based just on the religious portion. But now you have people turning around and say, okay, if that guy doesn't get to serve the baker, then we can shout this Republican woman out of a restaurant and refuse to serve her at the Red Hen. It works for one side, it works for both, or it doesn't work for either. I'm not sure if there's a question there, but where do you come down on that?
What I come down on is when people are not, I'm for people being served. I feel that the Supreme Court decision was a wrong decision, but the Supreme Court has made many wrong decisions.
And they will make many more now.
Yes, exactly.
How do you feel about the National Endowment of the Arts now? Like 25, 30 years since the big hoo-ha with the NEA4. How do you feel they are doing all these years later with the mandate that they have?
I don't keep up on the National Endowments for the Arts, but I feel that their budget, whatever budget they have, I feel that it needs to be doubled, tripled, or quadrupled. And I'm for arts in all forms, and I think that there should be a combination of regional, national, and urban and rural art programs, and that with creativity that people can be finding other ways of problem solving and putting their creative abilities in communities.
I don't think anybody can, well, I'm sure there are some people who object to that, but I can't imagine why. But somebody's going to object to anything. If I change Manischewitz wine to Kedem on Saturday mornings, somebody's going to object to that and give me hell.
Right.
They just do. So, but here's the question, that if you're not even thinking much about the NEA, one of the nice things is, considering that you're in a profession, essentially, as a performer, where there's always 90 to 95% unemployment, you've managed to make a career and feed your family. You got a husband, you got a kid, in this profession, even being on the fringe and the off-Broadway side of it. How do you cobble together? Is it from audiences paying? Do you raise money in different ways? Are you an invited speaker and performer all over the world? How does it work for you?
I think that the mystery of how the artist lives is a mystery, and how we learn how to survive and navigate in all the different angles of this world. But art is all around us, and we're going to be seeing words, humor, art in all aspects of life, and that there is capital in all those ways. But for my life, I think that I'd have to say that it was education that sustained me. So I'm in education. Sometimes in my life I create work, but I love academia, and I'm at NYU and Tisch School of the Arts, and I'm...
Yay! That happens to be the alma mater of the producer and host of this program, Dave. He went to NYU, Tisch, many, many years ago.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Being in education and learning and constantly doing that, I consider to be a spiritual act as well, and I am very blessed that I am able to be involved in education. And also in writing. In my book, Grabbing Pussy, which is out with OR Books, and you can get that online, is another way that I'm able to make a living and reach people. So yes, I have to put a puzzle of all the different skills that I have, and I think that having an education is what's helped me.
At NYU, what courses do you teach? Dance? Do you teach performance, voice?
There's a graduate program in art and public policy, and I teach people in the graduate program cultural activism.
Ooh.
How do you create artwork that is going to be influencing society or is going to be responding to issues in society or personal issues, public issues, social issues? I think what we're doing right here is a form of cultural activism, and the fact that we're having this engagement here, other people are listening, but it's not necessarily in a certain media, mainstream media. So this is a form of how we're engaging in cultural activism.
But I wish it were mainstream media. I wish I were on late-night television. I'm not. So maybe one day, maybe perhaps, if they add 150 more cable channels, there'll be room for me. But speaking of going mainstream, if I'd known you would be on the program, I would have asked a week or so ago when we talked to Wilson Germain Heredia, the actor who was in the Broadway musical Rent. Is it true, have you heard, and has it ever been confirmed, that the character, one of the most famous characters, the one played by Idina Menzel, Maureen, was kind of either based on or an homage to you?
I'm sure that it's probably a composite of people at that time. If that is true and if there can be some inspiration, that's beautiful. I have heard that, yes.
Speaking of another show, one of your own shows, and let's get a little political again, you did a piece called Unicorn Gratitude Mystery. I did not get to see that, but I read that in the show you poked fun at Donald Trump, duh, but you also poked a little fun at Hillary. Is that true?
Yes.
So, do you now wish, in retrospect, that you kind of left Hillary alone instead of contributing to a malaise on the left that's like, Hillary's not so great, so I don't know why the Democratic Party foisted her on us, not getting excited about her, may not vote for her, and look what happened.
That's a very good point. I was thinking that earlier. My performance, and actually from that performance, Unicorn Gratitude Mystery, some of those writings are in my book, Grabbing Pussy. And I'm really looking at the psychosexual exchanges that were projected onto Hillary, rather than looking at her policy. So the fact that her sense of gratitude, that I think would be the famous scene when she was at the debate and Trump was cowering over her, and the fact that she just accepted that, and her always, smiling and being so grateful and thankful, the gratitude, as well as the over concern about her deleted emails, the deleted, mail.
Yeah.
And it becomes this fear of castration complex. So those are the kind of ideas that I'm looking at, is what's behind the words and the over-concern, because there's just such an over-concern about the deleted emails. And also looking at the journey that we had to go through of Hillary and all of the abuse that she endured, with everything of imagining her returning to the Oval Office and thinking about the history with her own husband and the affairs and just the continued emotional slaughter that she had to endure and that we had to watch is it's also tragic, but there is a humor in it too, and it's very Shakespearean.
The hashtag #MeToo times that we're living in. As an intelligent person and also a professor, you can see that there's gradations. There's a difference between, say, Harvey Weinstein and Al Franken, and Charlie Rose. Are we eluding that by just maybe going a little too overboard? Or are you saying, hey, you know what? It's time for the flood to wash everything clean, and if some people who aren't as guilty as others get washed away, so be it.
Well, say that to me again in the way how you're thinking of that.
Well, in other words, there's a certain feeling right now, perhaps, in our society of women saying, okay, it's enough, we've taken just what you've been talking about that Hillary went through in her vetting to try and become president. Is there a point now where we're conflating animals like Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein with people like Garrison Keillor and Al Franken who made mistakes but not remotely on that level? Would you say that's fair because we need a purification in some way, or are we going overboard?
I hear what you're saying, and it's interesting to me about the need to have these borders or boundaries of human, of behavior, and to separate and to have the gradations verified. Yes, there is a difference between a violent serial rapist and a person who makes comments and says sexist comments and does not go to that physical violence. Yes. But when there is this environment and an overall environment, I think that that's what's being addressed. It's difficult and it's complicated. And yes, it's going to be messy. And yes, there's going to be some people and careers that they have established work environments where you feel that that's a form of sexism. It's an environment. And so I can't speak to individual situations that I am not aware of, but that's how, as a woman, I have worked in environments like that. It's very difficult to be in that. It's not the same, and I don't think anyone is making that the same.
Well, they kind of are. I mean, when Al Franken loses his job because he took a photograph where he was making believe he was honking a woman's boobs. He wasn't even doing it. He was just kind of, saying, hey, get the shot, let me do it, she's asleep, let me do it. It was bad taste. But he lost his seat for doing that. Is that overboard?
Yes, I feel that is a disgrace that had to happen to that point. But you would have to see if it was continuing on. But it was his choice. He decided to leave.
Well,
I think he decided to leave. I mean, he could have made some decisions there, but
Nixon decided to leave in 1972.
Those are things that I love Al Franken. I'm a big fan of his. What are you advocating then? That there has to be a cutoff, or that?
Yeah, there should be a gradation. There should be not political correctness run amok. I mean, we know that Eileen Wuornos and Roseanne Barr are two very different, they both made mistakes, but they're very different mistakes, Same kind of thing, I think, with a lot of the people.
I think Roseanne Barr, though, is going insane is different than, I think of these idea of lumping people together and doing that, or even having these conversations here. I'm not the judge, but I can speak to that environment. I think what's positive is that people are looking at what they're doing in the classroom, what they're doing, and he has gone to a certain point where everyone is very, very, very concerned and over-concerned about behavior. What we need is we need to have spaces where there can be correction. There need to be spaces, and this is too strong of a word, but it is the word to use, a rehabilitation, a reconciliation of behavior, and to change the way how
Now that
And that really what I think was that if you're seeing a situation where it's pervasive and that it continues and that it is an environment, that is where a person's career, that they have the power. And I feel that is, so taking all these different people, whether as I understand with Garrison Keillor, that it was looked at as an environment that was going on. But I think that within Al Franken, you're finding one situation, one bad move, and that there should be spaces of apology and reconciliation that can happen.
I love that answer. That's a wonderful answer. Let me ask you if you're willing to answer this question, and feel free to use names or not use names. But you mentioned that you've been in situations where the climate, the temperature was not friendly and conducive to you as a woman. Did you just subject yourself to it? Did you submit, or were you able to change the climate, to take corrective action yourself, or have action taken?
I've never been able to take corrective action.
Because you just felt if you did...
Well, either if you're there, I would either leave, not take the job, or if there's different circumstances, I have to go through the list. I mean, there's many different... Sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're thinking about your physical safety, you're going to do whatever it takes to get the hell out of there.
Oh.
And sometimes whether you're going to take the humiliation or you're not going to, there's different choices that you have in those moments.
I hate to even sort of ask, but in talking to both Penny Arcade and Adrienne Truscott, they were both raped and molested at one. Did you ever have to undergo that? Or, thank God...
No, I don't know that. I think in this certain situation here right now is that I feel like for my day that I'm here is for me to go through my memories or my list of aggressive acts done to me. But, yes, I have had many situations that have happened to me by many men in authority and in job situations, and it's very, very, very difficult.
The reason I asked the question is not so much to put you on the spot, but to say that it's interesting that both of those women also became not just performers and writers and playwrights, but very physical, confrontive, here is my naked body, men, deal with it, as have you.
I think that's a very, very good point, but there's going to be many women that have gone through my experiences, and they're working as waitresses, doctors, professors, mothers, rabbis, artists, throughout, farmers. And so I don't think that it's...
Yeah, I would not appear naked for my sermons because I don't want to torture my parishioners. But, but it's also fair to ask, you are, and still are, and have been for many, you're a beautiful woman. You're an attractive woman. So do you worry sometimes that men are going to objectify you, even if you're being incredibly pro-feminist, anti-male aggression, covering yourself with whatever? Do you still sort of say, well, the spotlight's on me and I'm very attractive, and how do you reconcile that?
I've never reconciled it. Well, I think that my work is taking my, if you want to say, disadvantage to advantage, and that is why the performing as a hysterical female, or the body, is what it's about. Is, to my earlier comments of talking about embodiment, instead of in resistance, I actually embody the projection, and that becomes a political gesture in performance. But I think that we can see examples of that throughout history, and especially with oppressed groups and within humor.
In the 1970s, the 1980s, you get up there and you do what you do in the way that you do it, and it was shocking. I mean, shocked everybody, even people who totally agree with you and are completely on your side. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe. Now, it's 2018. There's South Park and Rick and Morty and Family Guy and God knows what kind of movies. Is anything still a shock?
I'm going to bring back to an earlier comment that you made, and when I was speaking about mainstream and fringe, and that you love if you had more of a mainstream audience. Mm. And in some ways, doing the type of work that we do, and I'm going to say we do, does then find itself in mainstream. It does find itself in popular culture. I'm going to use the term, popular culture. So that maybe it isn't necessarily in our bodies, but it permeates collectively.
Well, God willing, you don't have to shock per se anymore. You can still be out there.
Well, I don't think that my work, I think what I always used to say is I didn't think that my work was shocking, but that I thought that life was shocking. What was happening in the world is shocking. And right now, the world is shocking.
Yeah.
I think that what I say and do, I have an older woman's body. There's a difference in terms of the sexual appeal of the younger female ingenue body as opposed to a woman who is a mother, a woman who is a professor, and her body and revealing it. There's different projections and discomfort level with the body, and that is in play. So I would say that my body or my persona more is of wisdom and life experience. And so there's a different energy in the room.
Oh, I like that. Now, speaking of energy and stuff, I will say, and I promised Dave that I would mention this, that one of Dave's wife's favorite moments ever of going to the theater was seeing one of your monologues, and you came out to start the show in a wedding dress, and immediately you started vacuuming, which was this ironic comment on, women, we're made to do this and look like this, and then, wedding, marriage, and it's going to be this beautiful thing, and then boom, there's housework, and there's what you really have to expect for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Of course, Dave's wife hasn't touched a vacuum cleaner in months, but we won't go there. You teach, and you also have a domestic life. Are you able to be, quote-unquote, a normal wife and mother, or does every single thing you do around the house, before you lift a dustpan or before you do a dish, are you thinking, I'm a woman in 2000 whatever, should I be doing this? How come my husband isn't doing this? How come, I still feel like I have to do this as a female?
That's a beautiful question, and I think that what I was interested in that image of the wedding dress with the vacuum cleaner, and that was from a piece, The American Chestnut, is about the juxtaposition of those two images, about the virginal white and this overdressed dress, and we can see these wedding dresses that are from Princess Di to these fairy tale elements, and then the vacuuming, picking up and just the gesture of it. And I find that those images together, the juxtaposition, embraced the roles of women and the fantasies of women. But for me, I love domestic life. Before I was speaking to you, I went out and saw see how my plants were doing, and I made myself some kale and Kiona salad last night, and I love looking at baskets, and I love the home. I love domestic life. Because I look at every gesture, whether it's setting the table, that can be an aesthetic and spiritual gesture. Mm. I don't think that one has to have a certain culture, a celebrity culture of where it's this external world of being seen, but the artistic world can also be within one's own home.
We're having a lovely time talking with Karen Finley. Go see her perform. She is doing passages from her new book, Grabbing Pussy. It's from OR Books. Is it .com or .org? Do you know? OR Books?
.com.
And she'll be reading and kind of stage performing Grabbing Pussy, and it's at the Laurie Beachman Theater over on West 42nd Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. It's in the West Bank Cafe, is the giant building that it's in. 3 consecutive Sundays, July 15th through July 29th. Just a couple more moments of questions for Karen Finley with us. Do you have any heroes, or is it dangerous to have heroes?
You mean heroes or
people iconically that you look up to, or that you did when you were growing up?
Well, right now there's many people that are in my life and performers, but I just was thinking about moments of heroes or sheroes, and one is an artist who two people that just recently passed away. One was Sabina Ott, who is an extraordinary artist and gave her life to education, and so I love her. And the writer for Details magazine, Stephen Sabin, I've been thinking about him and about being a cultural critic and reporting on nightlife and how important nightlife and those heroes in nightlife culture. And so that's what I've been thinking about. Education, people who work in art education and people who are also in nightlife. And that celebration can be a form of activism.
Oh, I like that. And I'm sorry if this is also a tough-ish question, but is art cathartic enough for you? Because people who are the children of suicides are worried that there's going to be mental illness in them, or that they might go there at one point. Did you ever go there, or did arts rescue you? And you can get everything out in what you do, and thereafter go to the dark place.
Thank you for asking such an important question now in our society of bringing up suicide and the relationship between art as catharsis or a creative gestalt, especially in the recent suicides of Bourdain and Kate Spade.
Right.
I've been thinking about that so much these past 2 weeks because you didn't say it directly, but yes, my father committed suicide. And so I have written a text about that in the moment in this time, about how I see this moment and about with suicide and also in the relationship to separation of children with parents and their children are separated from them. So I've written in part of my performance that I'll be doing at the Laurie Beachman Theater will include new writings which are reflecting on this moment in time about how we consider suicide, how we consider these celebrities, how we look at it and reflect in our life and time, and the separation of families at the borders.
And that piece is going to be,
That will be included. I'm including it so that actually in my performance I'll be doing.
Oh, okay.
50 to 60% of it will be Grabbing Pussy, and the other will be the new. I don't even have a title for it yet, but I think I'm going to be calling it Solstice. But I have a new text that I'll be speaking about it, and I feel that is the least that I can do about my life experience and the agony that I went through. But what I had learned as a survivor of suicide and also within mental illness and family, luckily that I do not suffer from that, but is that I was told to transform my pain into compassion. And that is how I try to live my creative life, is to bring compassion within the work and to turn my pain into compassion for others. I don't always am able to do it, but I try to stop myself to see how I can. So these great sadness that we have is for us to understand is to somehow that we take our sadness and that we open it up for giving and creating with whatever abilities that we have, and to stand up and to give for others.
Last question in more of a, hopefully a more positive vein, even though everybody's probably feeling very negative now about the way the world is going. But let's make believe that the economy stays really, really strong as it has been. What do people like you and artists and everybody else do if we want to see a change in the government in 2.5 years? What can be done as an activist person as well as an artist?
Well, we have to make sure people vote. We have to not go away. We have to be present. It has to be a sense of witnessing the artist as historical recorder. The one thing that you cannot do is, from hearing all the information that's going on, is to become depressed and to become immobilized. And also to be remembered that this constant onslaught, that there have been other times in history, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, those weren't great years. The 60s, 50s, the 40s. You know what I mean? So, sense that now, all of a sudden, we've discovered oppression.
It is funny because, people are saying, oh, things are so horrible. I mean, do you remember, the years after 9/11? Do you remember Watergate? Do you remember Vietnam? I mean, I don't remember World War II years, but at the moment, things really aren't that bad, which is why we're concentrating on the things that are bad.
No, also, they'd be looking at what year was good, 1860, 1913, I don't know. I mean, really, what year? Look at Reagan, that was such a happy time. I mean, Reagan invented the saying, I don't care, do you? And, Melania found that jacket in a closet. I mean, it left over by Nancy. The Reagan era was a time that he was silent about AIDS.
Right.
This feeling that, here we are. Yes, we've always been, here we are. So that if you get rid of that, and that you have to have this spiritual centering and look at leaders who have moved forward and get up, we are to be lazy.
Now, since you mentioned spiritual, I'm going to make this the last question. You are, at least a tiny portion, Jewish, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Yay. So, do you ever feel Jewish? And how do you feel about God? Are you an atheist? Are you... Where are you religiously and spiritually?
Well, I always question God. I think I was questioning God. I'm always questioning God.
Which means you believe in him, but you question him or her.
I feel very culturally Jewish. I feel that is a very strong part of my outlook, my humor, and my constantly questioning and being critical, being constantly critical. So that's an important part of, that's just who I am. But in terms of within God, I always want to make sure, I think that God, for me, is, I do believe that there's something more than this. And so, yes, I do have some relationship to some type of higher power or some sense of the universe calling. And I don't know what that is.
I mean, since you mentioned the Jewishness, let's not forget that Jewish people love puns and wordplay. And if you want to hear bunches and bunches of wordplay, really clever, really sharp, really smart, with a point, you go see Karen Finley at the Laurie Beachman Theater from July 15th through July 29th, Sunday nights, 7 o'clock. The Beachman Theater is on West 42nd Street between 8th and 9th Avenue in the West Bank Cafe. And you're going to want to get a copy of her book, Grabbing Pussy, from orbooks.com, orbooks.com. I mean, here you've heard her in sort of an academic, conversational mode like that. Wait till you see this woman on stage and what she can do. Karen Finley, it has been absolutely delightful and thought-provoking talking to you in the neighborhood. I wish you much success, health, happiness, and better years to do art about in the years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was just a delight and inspiring, and thank you for taking the time for your research and your care and humor today.
Thank you so much, and shalom to you.
Shalom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.